7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, a wise-cracking dream demon, and that is my co-host, a terrible psychiatrist who has a crush on his younger, attractive coworker. And welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate, where today we bring you the last episode of Season 1. It has been a long, almost 60 episodes, but here we are. The show grew so much more than we ever thought it would in just the first season. We at least doubled, if not more, than our goal for this season. I think we're probably sitting around like 20,000 downloads across all of our platforms. And a huge part of that is you guys, especially those of you who listen every week, comment on episodes and posts and subscribe and follow and all that stuff. So thank you. So we decided for the last episode of Season 1, we would go big. And because we are currently at the convention with the Dream Warriors cast, why not cover the best fucking sequel to ever exist, according to me. So on this episode, we are talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Man, I thought part 2 was the best sequel in your opinion.
No, that's a negative.
This movie is iconic, obviously.
For sure.
We just found out today, actually, it was like 9 years since Wes Craven had passed. So, and with the Dream Warriors crew being at the horror con we're at, it just seemed like all the stars aligned. It was the last episode.
Yeah, I got to meet Nancy Thompson today in real life. I was a bumbling idiot. She's awesome though. She is like 100% awesome. She's great in real life. If you ever get a chance to meet her because she's fucking cool, down to earth. Highly recommend checking her out.
Yeah, but we met quite a few people today, talked to quite a few people, and I will say, yeah, everybody was great, but I think her personality by far, I think she was definitely super down to earth, super easy to talk to, even if you're starstruck like my host over here.
Yeah, I was. I won't lie. Yeah, I mean, she was asking me like, because I had her sign my glove. I had her, I got a poster with a bunch of the Dream Warriors cast, and she's kind of asked me what I wanted on there, and I was just a mess, and I eventually had to just tell her to, put on there whatever the hell she wanted to because I didn't know, I couldn't think. But yeah, she's awesome. A lot of the other cast is awesome. We also got to see a panel with them and listen to them kind of talk about this movie, which was great because we're also recording an episode about it. So yeah, I think you're right. The stars did align, and I'm really surprised like you had kind of picked to mention this movie because I always thought I would pick this movie. This is literally one of my most favorite movies ever.
Well, this has been in the making for a while. I know when the day that I seen that the HorrorCon here was announced, and the first stars that they had mentioned that were going to be there was all of the Dream Warriors and Nancy Thompson herself, Heather Langenkamp. The first thing I did was call you. I literally ran out of my job into the parking lot to call you and be like, yeah, 'cause my brain was like, there's no fucking way. Like, maybe I'm seeing this wrong, something. Had to call you. I know this is your favorite of the Nightmare series. And everything just lined up, man. Seemed like it's the last episode of the season. We were literally going to be meeting them and being there for the panel.
Yeah, and by the way, Bill Moseley is fucking awesome in real life. Very cool guy. Another guy you should check out. Totally not Dream Warriors related, but I want to throw that out there. Bill Moseley is a fucking cool dude.
Yeah, really hope tomorrow we get to actually meet him. I will say that as far as the panels go, like most of the panels that went on was multiple people from different movies, and they go up there and obviously answer questions about the movie or about other things. Bill Moseley did a panel just himself. It was just him. And I could have listened to him talk for like 5 hours. I mean, he's so good at doing. You could tell he's done these quite a few times, but the level of detail and the like down to earthness that he has, he has that personality too that you would expect Bill Moseley to have.
Yeah.
He is Otis.
So we've only been through, half of the convention so far. So, tomorrow we got some more convention to go. So we'll probably update the second half of the convention probably on the next episode. But for now, let's jump into the motherfucking Dream Warriors.
Let's do it.
But first, if you want to stay up to date on what is going on with us or the show, talk about or submit your movie request, or just say hey, you can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facebook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instagram at Grindhouse.Syndicate.Horror.Pod, and many more, which you can find links for in the show notes as always. And please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes.
And if you really love us and don't want us to overdose on Hypnosil, give us a review. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors is a 1987 American fantasy slasher film. It's not considered why would they not label it a horror film? American fantasy slasher film. Well, I guess slasher's horror. It was directed by Chuck Russell. Now, this is Russell's first time directing, which becomes important in a minute. So the story was originally developed by Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner and is the third installment in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and stars Heather Langenkamp, Patricia Arquette, Larry Fishburne, and Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. Nancy Thompson, who is now a psychiatrist, and Kristen, a patient who can bring others into her own dreams, team up with other kids to launch a daring rescue into the dreamland and save a child from Freddy Krueger. Now, how this movie really came to be was Wes Craven didn't have any part in Nightmare 2, and at this point, he became involved again with the Nightmare franchise. It was originally like he wanted it to end here. That's kind of why Wes got back involved. So him and Bruce Wagner wrote the screenplay, but New Line thought it was like lacking in some parts. It was a lot more darker. Wes didn't really like the funny Freddy. He liked scary Freddy. So he really wrote the original screenplay to be like that. But New Line, kind of wanted him to kind of have a little more humor. So Chuck Russell and his writing partner, Frank Darabont. Now, if you don't recognize that name, because these two guys were brought in by New Line to rewrite this script, I'll enlighten you. So Frank Darabont, he wrote and directed The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, The Mist. He came up with that fucking amazing ending for The Mist. And he did The Walking Dead. I believe he did the first season of Walking Dead. But he did many, many other awesome things. And he's fucking phenomenal. Check his stuff out. But this is how Chuck Russell ended up directing this, which still to this day, most of the cast blame Russell for a very tense and shitty filming experience.
Yeah, it's Frank
Darabont?
Yeah, I didn't. I knew as soon as you said the name.
Yeah.
And I had no idea he was in on this.
Yeah, they Wes Craven and his writing partner did it, and then they actually came in and rewrote about 70% of Wes Craven's original script.
Man, I wonder if you can get your hands on the original script.
Possibly.
The original Wes Craven.
Yeah, probably.
I would definitely be super excited to just see what the darker version of it was. I will say, I love, obviously Wes Craven did the first one. It's much more dark, much scarier. Yeah. And I love the more scary aspect, but this movie allowed Robert Englund to really I think at this point he nailed the character down, and it gave him the freedom to kind of go in and do some improv, and Freddy really became
Freddy.
the top
Yeah.
tier Freddy
Yeah.
in this movie, which he didn't have the ability to do in the prior ones. So yeah, I would definitely be curious to read that, but I wouldn't give up the Freddy that we all know and love. The version
no.
of him that really, really peaks and becomes the Freddy we love in this movie.
Yeah, so Dream Warriors was theatrically released on February 27th of 1987, and it grossed $44.8 million on a budget of just $4.6 million. It received mostly positive reviews from critics and is considered by many to be one of the best films in the Elm Street series. By the way, I got a cool fact. So in 1986, both John Saxton and Robert Englund wrote their own scripts for a third Nightmare film. Now, Saxton's was a prequel, and it showed the lead up and the eventual murder of Freddy. Sounds cool, right?
Yeah, it definitely does.
Well, there's a but. Unfortunately, he had it where Freddy is actually innocent
Oh,
and
God.
framed by Charlie Manson and the Manson family.
Yep, you lost me there. You lost me at innocent, and then when you said Charles Manson, that was just, yeah, no. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking when he went with that. I mean, the innocent thing, I hate that, but that's, I could see somebody writing that. It's a bad idea, but good God. Had throw Charles Manson in there too.
It got a little wild. I'm trying to remember.
Was the son of Sam the real killer?
I'm trying to remember. So Robert Englund's wasn't so crazy. His actually was like a continuation of the first one, where the character Tina from the original, her older sister who was gone to college, she actually comes back after Tina's murder and tries to start, and she gets involved in the whole Freddy thing. And I will say that I can't remember all the details, or they didn't have all the details, but I do know that according to Robert Englund, that script sat around for years, and then they actually ended up using a bunch of that stuff for the first 2 episodes of the TV show. Which, remember, the first 2 episodes is, it shows them like hunting Freddy down, the police, yeah. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the prequel, though. That's the only part of that idea I liked, but it would be really interesting to get a prequel, kind of most of the movie leading up to Freddy's death, and then maybe the end is like Freddy being reborn in these nightmares and him kind of navigating that, and that could be really cool.
It could be.
But as long as you leave Charles Manson and the fucking Night Stalker out of it.
Or just him being innocent, because, come on.
Yeah, I don't want any part of him being innocent. He's awful. I mean, that's what makes Freddy.
So filming took place at the Royce Hall building on the University of California, Los Angeles campus, and this was used for the exterior shots of Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital. So St. Brendan Catholic Church was used for the church scenes. The scenes in Freddy's boiler room, they were filmed in a converted warehouse across the street from the LA County Jail. So Mark Schustrom, who also was doing work on the set for The Evil Dead 2, possibly, a keyword, smuggled the Freddy glove used in Dream Warriors and used it as a background prop for one day, explaining as why the glove appeared in that film, which was also released the same year.
Yeah, we actually just talked about that.
Yep. So the special effects were created by a team led by Peter Chesney and included Mark Schustrom and Kevin Yeager. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it should, because we have actually talked about him a few times now. He worked on Nightmare on Elm Street 2, 3, and 4, I'm pretty sure. He created the Chucky doll. He worked on, like, I think all the Chucky movies into, like, Bride of Chucky. He created the Crypt Keeper doll. He did effects for Friday the 13th, the final chapter. The list kind of goes on. And he is the one who married Catherine Hicks which was Andy's mom in Child's Play. Remember we talked about them two meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was him.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yep.
It seems like longer than, I guess it's been less than a year.
It has
We
been
did
less
that,
than a
but
year, but yeah.
Seems like a long time ago. But yeah, he definitely had some major contributions to the horror history.
So the theme song Dream Warriors was written and performed by the American heavy metal band Dokken. The single was a success, and a decision was made to include heavy metal songs in the soundtrack of the sequels. The band's manager, Cliff Bernstein, was acquainted with Wes Craven and was able to get a copy of the film's script as a reference for the lyrics. Robert Englund as Freddy then helped by providing unique footage with the band for the music video.
I was wondering how this band ended up getting in
There
to
you
do
go.
this song. Yeah, not a fan of the 80s hair band songs, 80s ballads. As a song, I fucking hate this, but I think you mentioned it earlier. The amount of times this song gets stuck in your head after watching this movie.
It's in my head. Like I said, it probably pops in my head like 3 times a week. I don't know why. It's just the Dream Warriors part that it just is in a loop in my head.
I love it for the nostalgia. I hate everything else about it.
Yeah. All right, so ratings. Rotten Tomatoes, 67%. IMDb, a 6.7 out of 10. Letterboxd, 3.5 out of 5. But the Google average audience rating is a 4.4 out of 5.
Yeah, it's always the Google average audience rating, and that's where the real people rate shit.
These are all
That's
too
where
low. They're all too low.
What was the Google?
4.4.
4.4. Yeah,
Still too low.
Yeah, but it's in the ballpark for sure.
I like it.
Yeah, that's where, like I said, they're almost always much closer. That's where the real fans, the real people, the people who aren't like critics, go in there and let people know what they think.
So if you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it streaming nowhere, unless you would like to rent it from Amazon, Apple, or YouTube for like $3. Unfortunately, it's not streaming anywhere.
Or you go out and buy it, because if there's any movie, I'm not gonna say that we've covered lately because we've done some bangers with the Evil Dead, but in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, this is definitely one that's worth going out and buying.
Oh, for sure. So, you ready to talk about the plot of the motherfucking Dream Warriors?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
let's do it.
I had to think about that a little bit.
I think I'm ready all day since we first stepped in there and seen them all there. Seen them all in person. I got all excited. I've been itching to talk about it, so let's get to it. So we start off with a Edgar Allan Poe. Man, wow.
Wow. I thought you were doing some word trickery there.
No, Poe and quote are like they look similar right now. So we start off with a Edgar Allan Poe quote, and it says, "Sleep, those little slices of death, how I loathed them." Then we get the title card, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. We then jump into a bunch of close-up shots of like flour and water being mixed up, newspaper cut into small pieces, and then them being like combined together. And it's not quite obvious what is going on here, but soon we see that this girl is building a paper mache house. But not just any paper mache house, no. The house from her nightmares. And as we zoom out, we see it is 1428 Elm Street, Springwood, Ohio, aka Nancy Thompson's former house where she battled the dream demon himself, Freddy motherfucking Krueger. So, as this girl is building this masterpiece, we see that she is starting to get very sleepy. So in order to stay awake, we see her crank the radio, she eats some coffee. You gotta be pretty hardcore to eat coffee. I actually ate coffee ground, the instant coffee in the army one time, trying to stay awake.
I think we've all been desperate enough to try that at least once and regret it. It's awful. Bad. It's very, very bitter.
Yes. So next we see this girl's mom just bursts into her room. She cuts the radio off and she begins to berate her about going to bed. So we find out that this girl's name is Kristen And the reason that she doesn't want to go to bed is because she keeps having really bad dreams. But her mom doesn't give a fuck because she has some male company over and she wants to get some dick.
She's aching for some quaking.
I wonder, does like Kristen cockblock her often? Because she's acting like she gets cockblocked often.
You know, I got the vibe that she's one of those women that don't tell these men that she has a daughter.
Oh.
So she wants them in bed, like not interrupting her sex.
She's not a fucking toddler. She's almost an adult.
Yeah, but I definitely
Yeah.
100% got the vibe that she hides that she has a daughter. She leaves that part out or doesn't mention that they're at the house. Because she walks in and she's like, "What are you doing up? Like, it's past 1 a.m. And I'm like, what teenager is like struggling to stay awake at 1 a.m? Now, obviously, she's been staying awake for a while because of her nightmares, but I know at like, how old is she? 16?
She's like 16 or 17 or
17
something.
years old. 1 a.m. was like
Yeah.
9 o'clock for me now.
Yeah. So we then see Kristen finally fall asleep, and immediately a gust of wind blows in, and we start hearing the famous song, 1, 2, Freddy's Coming For You. Kristen then gets out of bed to discover that she is now like right in front of a dilapidated 1428 Elm Street house, where she sees a bunch of little kids playing jump rope in the yard. Kristen then begins speaking to a little girl when suddenly we hear the scrape of Freddy's metal blades against something. The little girl then suddenly heads inside the house with Kristen trailing behind her. We then see the furnace suddenly ignite and the little girl announces that Freddy's home. Kristen picks the girl up and tries to run for the door with Freddy in pursuit. The floor suddenly turns to goo, causing Kristen's feet to get stuck. She then manages to escape right before Freddy gets her with his glove, and after running down a few more hallways, she manages to run into a large room with tons of dead teenagers hanging from the ceiling.
Man, this opening sequence, I think, in my opinion, is the best in the series.
It's awesome. I love the including like the house, but it's like it's kind of like hell.
It's kind of like it's a house at first, but then she's running down these hallways.
It's like a maze.
Almost like it's you get a little bit of like a long hallway school vibe, and then you get the boiler room vibe. It's like all of Freddy's key notorious places in this one dream. But from the moment the little girl, like the door opens and she rides her tricycle into the house, which was, I don't know why, it's never really nothing that jumped out to me in the past, but it was really creepy. The set designers, man, they spent so much time. I mean, they had to have spent a ton of time building this. I think this is definitely the best opening sequence.
It's awesome.
And the hanging bodies, man, that was the best part. Like when the fucking all the hanging bodies she runs into.
Yeah,
Super
back then
creepy.
they didn't have CGI to just CGI a bunch of fake people. You know, they had to actually make this shit.
No, and that's something that becomes really evident in a lot of Nightmare on Elm Streets, but especially this movie. They do so much really, really intricate stuff that nowadays would be done with CGI.
Yep.
This movie proves that CGI is not a must. That you can build some pretty fucking amazing things.
So the little girl then tells Kristen to put her down, but when Kristen looks down at her, she sees the girl has turned into a rotting corpse. You know, I'll insert this in here real quick because this is really cool. So I seen the special effects guys, they actually spent months building a little girl robot corpse. And when the director seen it, it was so unsettling because it was so good that he refused to let them have it in the movie.
Nah,
So they
that's,
actually had to build this, they had to throw together this little shitty skeleton corpse, which is why it doesn't look that great. But yeah, if you actually watch interviews with the special effects guys, they talk about how devastating it was to build this awesome animatronic child, and they didn't even get to use it.
Do you know if there's any pictures or video of it out there?
I didn't get a chance to look. I actually seen them talking about it on the Never Sleep Again documentary. They actually go into a little bit more detail about it, but I don't think they showed a picture of it. But there
Yeah.
maybe one out there.
Fantastic documentary, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the biggest kick in the nuts as a horror fan is to hear somebody say that there was this thing that was so awesome and so scary, they left it out of the movie. It's like,
Yeah.
what? Why? Like,
Yeah.
just don't even tell us that.
So this jolts Kristen out of her dream where we see her wake up covered in sweat and very shaken. She then walks into her bathroom and attempts to wash her hands when suddenly the sink comes to life, grabs her hands, and we see Freddy laughing in the mirror. Kristen lets out a scream and attempts to get her hand free from the sink knob. We then see the other knob kind of turns into like a mini version of Freddy's glove where it begins slashing at her arm. Kristen's mom walks in, definitely rocking the I just got fucked hair. She goes in to yell at Kristen when she then realizes that her daughter is standing there with her wrist slashed and a razor blade in her other hand. Kristen then comes to, realizing that Freddy must have made her cut her own wrist to look like she had tried to kill herself, and then she passes out. The next day, we jump to Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital, where we see that Kristen has been admitted by her mother. We then meet one of our main characters, Dr. Neil Gordon, who is in charge of this very specific group of teenage patients who all claim to have these very violent nightmares and believe them to be really happening. We also meet I guess he's like an orderly, Max Fishburne.
Mr. Fishburne. This was Lawrence Fishburne before he was Lawrence Fishburne.
This was Larry Fishburne, yes.
Yes, this is, so you had mentioned that earlier, and when I started watching it, I realized that I had never noticed that was Lawrence Fishburne.
Really?
It's the only time I've ever
Wow.
seen him play a different fucking character than the same goddamn character he plays in every fucking movie he's
Yeah.
in. So much so that I didn't even realize it was a really young version of him.
No.
He was Lawrence Fishburne before Lawrence Fishburne.
Well, in this episode here, he's going to be referred to as Max Fishburne. But yeah, he's taken like a pretty good liking to this group of troubled teens that he's kind of with every day. So he's going to kind of play that role in the story. So I'm going to run through all of our main teenage characters here. So first we have Taryn, and she is like this punk rock chick who used to be addicted to heroin, I guess. She's only like 17, so I don't really know how she got so hooked on heroin. I'm not sure, but
Happens.
hey, it happens.
It happens. It's before fentanyl killed you before you were 17.
Yes. Then we have Jennifer, and she's like super addicted to cigarettes, and she likes long walks on the beach and burning herself. Oh, and she also dreams of being a famous actress. Then we have Joey. I'm not exactly sure what is wrong with him, but he doesn't speak, and he really wants to fuck the nurse here at Weston Hills.
He's chronically horny.
Yeah, he's
Like
horny
every
all the time.
teenage boy, but apparently even more because they put him in a facility for it.
By the way, that teardrop tattoo looks so out of place on him.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they were going with
He's
there.
got like a collared shirt and a teardrop tattoo, and it's just confusing.
Yeah, we've talked about this, like, especially
Yeah.
when we did Ticks, the way they did certain, like, characters from bad areas in horror movies, and
Panic.
yeah, how, like, or out of touch with reality that a lot of Hollywood was back then. To put a teardrop tattoo on this kid made no sense.
Speaking of Ticks, we seen one of the fucking screen used props from Ticks today, and it was awesome. I'll post a picture.
We got to see an actual tick from Ticks.
And it was,
It's
I tried to
great.
buy it, they wouldn't sell it to me,
No.
but I tried. So next we have Philip. I don't really know if there's really anything wrong with him, except he's like having these nightmares, and other than that, he's like seems pretty normal. He does sleepwalk, but I don't think sleepwalking gets you thrown in the loony bin.
Yeah, he looks like he could be pretty angsty.
Yeah, but that's like
they don't really ever explain like his backstory. The only thing they mention, like you said, is sleepwalking, and unless you're like sleepwalking and you're waking, like your parents are waking up with you holding like a buck 120 to their neck or something, and maybe that's what it was. Maybe he was
Yeah.
doing dangerous shit.
So then we got Will, who can't use his legs. He's in a wheelchair. He apparently jumped off of something very high and now he cannot walk. But we also know that he's like really into fantasy stuff like Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, like nerd shit. And last but not least, Kincaid, who is pretty normal, except I think he like has like an anger problem because he kind of just wants to fight everybody all the time.
He definitely he's in here for his anger issue.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So that is our cast of misfit teens. So next up, we see Dr. Gordon talking to his boss, Dr. Sims, who has serious bitch face. And he is asking her about the new person hired to assist him with the teens. He doesn't want any help, and he tries to convince her to turn this person away. But she declines because apparently this person has made groundbreaking discoveries when it comes to dreams. Dr. Gordon and Sims are then called to the exam room where we see Kristen losing her shit. Gordon then attempts to stick a needle in her, but she kicks the fuck out of him and cuts Max Fishburne's arm with a scalpel. Kristen then backs herself into a corner and begins singing the Freddy song, and as she says 9, 10, never, the camera then cuts to a lady standing in the doorway. As she finishes the rhyme for Kristen, it's motherfucking Nancy Thompson, the best final girl ever.
The queen returned.
Yes. Nancy then walks towards Kristen and asks her where she learned that rhyme, and Kristen gives up the scalpel and hugs Nancy tightly. I wonder if Gordon's like, God damn, she is good. Holy shit. So then we see Gordon and Nancy talking outside about the teens and their fear of sleep. Gordon compliments her on how she was able to handle Kristen. She then tells him that she herself has had experience with pattern nightmares. She then goes to get up and leave, but she drops her purse and a pill bottle labeled Hypnosil falls out. Dude, who the fuck just picks up a stranger's prescription bottle and then like obviously reads it?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was pretty rude.
That is a fucking weirdo move.
Yeah, I would have said something. I'd have been like, can I fucking help you?
Yeah.
Like, you want me to read off my whole medical history to you?
Not cool, Dr. Gordon. Not cool. That's a coworker, not a patient. So next we see Nancy has stopped by Kristen's house to speak to her mother, which is basically a big fat waste of time. She doesn't really seem to care about Kristen's situation, and she basically blames it on her wanting attention. Nancy then goes up to Kristen's room to grab her personal items when she sees the model of her old house, 1428 Elm. We then jump on over to Dr. Gordon, who is being a creep and looking up Nancy's medication on the computer. And this is where we learn that Hypnosil is an experimental drug that is used to suppress dreams. So later that night, Kristen falls asleep in her bed, where she then dreams that a child's tricycle comes rolling into her room, leaving tire marks of blood on the floor. As she gets up, the bike then slowly melts as the door slams, and she is suddenly transported into the dilapidated Elm Street house again. After walking around a bit, the floor then begins shaking like something is under the carpet, when suddenly the floor bursts open and a giant Freddy snake attacks her, swallowing her legs. I do want to go back, man. The melting bike is fucking cool.
Yep.
I don't know how they did that. I feel like I've heard them talk about it before at some point, but I can't remember. But it looks good. It's cool.
So yeah, I put that in my notes as well. Not only the melting was awesome, but also just the unsettling creepiness of it rolling in and leaving the blood tracks behind, and then it melting. I actually spent a couple minutes thinking about that as well. I think that they had to have made the bike out of some type of like wax or something that they could.
Good point.
They could heat it. That's probably why it was like moving so slow, and it was. I don't know. I assume they probably used some type of spot heaters or something. And then we get introduced to old Richard Krueger.
Yeah.
Freddy Dick himself.
Yeah. So this big
This big dick.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Should we get through the scene first and then talk about it? Maybe?
Yeah, we'll talk about the dick.
I mean, because we could talk about it now. So this thing, it swallows her legs. And as she is being eaten, makes it even worse. She screams for Nancy, who is asleep at her house, when suddenly Nancy gets sucked into Kristen's dream, and she stabs the Freddy snake with a piece of glass in the eye, and this frees Kristen. Freddy then recognizes Nancy, and he gets pissed. Nancy then grabs Kristen's arm, and they escape to another room when suddenly the dream is over, and Nancy is back in her living room. So, for those of you that do not know, the giant Freddy snake was originally painted like Freddy, kind of skin tones.
Like the color of
And,
Freddy's dick.
And well, so they made it, and when they went to film the scene, everybody kind of realized that it looked like a giant dick. Like I think the biggest version was 12 feet long. I think it was saying.
Yeah, they did 3 versions of it. Yeah, I think the biggest one was something like 12 foot long. Looked like a giant dick.
If you've never seen it, it's basically like a 12-foot long shaft, and then the head is like Freddy's head. That's the best way to describe it, because I'm sure everybody knows what a dick looks like. So, yeah, it just looks like a big giant penis. But they had already made it, so there's nothing they could do about it. So what they did was they actually went over and painted over it with like dark green and blue and black color to kind of make it look less like a penis.
Less like old Richard Krueger.
Yeah.
Dick Krueger himself.
We actually we had known about this for years, but it was really funny that it got brought up during the panel. Because at first somebody, I can't remember who, tried to be like really polite about it, and somebody else finally was like, it looked like a dick.
Yeah, it was Jennifer Rubin.
Yeah.
And we had seen this years and years and years ago on the Never Sleep Again documentary, them talking about this. But then it was brought up during the panel, and you can tell Heather Langenkamp tried to be modest about it and not like come out and say it. And I was wondering if one of them was going to say it. And I thought if any of them, based off of, what we've seen from the actual actors in the documentary, it would probably be Jennifer. It was. She came out. She's like, yeah, it looked like a penis.
Yeah, we actually talked to her for a little bit today. She's super rad too, man. If you get a chance to, get an autograph or bump into her and talk to her, she's super cool. So the next day, Nancy goes to visit Kristen at Weston Hills to ask her about the dream. Kristen then explains that when she was young and she would have nightmares, she was able to pull her dad into her dreams to save her. She then asks Nancy about the man in her dreams, and Nancy informs her that yes, he is indeed real. We then see Nancy and Gordon having dinner together at a restaurant, and Nancy tries to bring up the kids in their dreams by explaining that they are in real physical danger. Gordon immediately calls her out about the Hypnosil like a fucking dick. He then shoots down the idea of prescribing it to the teens, and even going as far as to tell Nancy she shouldn't be taking it either. I'd be like, dude, I get it from a fucking doctor. Like,
yeah,
someone else who also does what you do but knows about dreams. Obviously, you don't know fucking thing about dreams.
Yeah, I'd be like, mind your fucking business.
Yeah.
And we see in the first hospital scene, there's the radios playing in the background, and it's talking about teens offing themselves.
Mhm.
And they're having this big problem with this like what they think is like a mass dream hysteria. Even if this was some mass hysteria somehow caused by overly sexual tendencies, according to Dr. Elizabeth Bitchface Sims, even if it was, like, why wouldn't you want to give them something to stop their
relief,
dreams
yeah.
until they can kind of figure out what's going on?
So then Nancy says that she used to be like them and she knows what they're going through. And Gordon says he does too. And Nancy shoots him a look like, bitch, please. Like the look she gives him, like, dude, you have no fucking idea. Needless to say, it was a pretty awkward dinner after that. So later on, it's lights out at Weston Hills, and we see that Will and Joey are roommates and they take turns guarding each other as they sleep. Pretty smart move. And on this particular night, Joey is taking the first watch as Will gets some rest. We then jump on over to Philip and Kincaid's room where we see them both peacefully sleeping. So Philip makes these little, they're like string puppet dolls. Do you remember what they called them at the panel? They called them something else. Marriott. They got some kind of name for them. I don't remember.
Yeah,
But
I don't know. They're just puppets.
Well, they're
like,
them puppets. Yeah, they got some kind of fancy name.
yeah,
Yeah, they're like
tendon puppets.
Yeah. But he makes these little things, and we see that one of them turns into Freddy, which looks fucking cool. The Freddy doll then cuts himself down, and then he grows into a full-grown real Freddy. He then looks at Philip, who is now awake, or so he thinks he is. And right as he goes to scream, Freddy takes his voice away. He then slashes his arms and legs, pulling his veins out and using them to turn Philip into a human string puppet. This is apparently like, I didn't even know until today, like how many people are like freaked out by this kill.
Yeah, I didn't either. I always loved this kill, but apparently during the panel, we learned that it's kind of the mass consensus choice for the scariest kill of the movie.
Yeah, because the fan favorite is the later on when we get to it is the TV kill.
Man, I don't know. I feel like after everybody's reaction, this may be the fan. That's what shocked me, as I thought that one was.
I think the TV kill is funny.
I think it's more iconic.
It's more iconic, but this is the kill that scares people the most. Like if somebody's gonna say what freaks you out the most, it's this one.
Yeah, and we get to this, what we think at the end of the episode, but after watching this really close, I think I agree. This is probably the at least scariest.
Yeah,
kill.
it is creepy because there's nothing funny about it. This is one of the kills that's like actually scary.
Yeah, and the way they, for anybody who's never seen it, I'm sure a lot of you have, but his tendons are literally pulled through his wrists and out of his feet. And giant Freddy in the sky is literally turned
like
him into a human puppet.
Yeah.
But the tendons and the practical effects, as simple as this is compared to some of the other crazy practical effects in this movie, I think it's super effective because it not only looks so good, but it almost gives you that cringe that you get sometimes when you see something in a movie. That just like, that would fucking incredibly, like that alone wouldn't kill you, but it would be massively painful.
So with his new found control over Philip's body, he then makes him get out of bed and begin walking out of the room. Kincaid wakes up during this, but to him, it just looks like Philip is sleepwalking again. Now, Joey, who remember, is on watch, notices through his window that Philip is standing on the edge of the building outside. He immediately rushes over and yanks Will's limp body over to the window to show him. Will tells him to run and get help, and as he bangs on the window attempting to wake Philip up. Joey then runs and wakes everybody up, who all then rush to the window to yell for Philip. We then get a shot of a giant Freddy in the sky controlling Philip's movements with his veins and tendons. Freddy then uses his glove to cut the veins and tendons free, causing Philip to fall to his death. The next day in group, the kids get into a debate over Philip's death. They then start arguing over Freddy when Kristen then says that he wants to turn them against each other, where Nancy then backs her up. Finally, a very confused Dr. Bitchface Sims interrupts them by basically telling them that Philip died from a sleepwalking accident and they are crazy.
Dr. Sims is just her fucking face. The lady they picked, and I'm sorry for I'm sure she's probably gone now, but
I think she's actually the oldest living Nightmare on Elm Street actor at 101.
Well, hopefully she doesn't listen to
She'd probably
the podcast, but God, she is awful. All I can say, she plays such a good bitch, but the look, her look fits this character so. The best word I could think of when trying to describe it was rotten. She just looks fucking rotten. If I had to go to this hospital and I seen her, I'd be like, oh, fuck.
Yeah,
this is going to be a pain in the ass.
Not going to be good. Dr.
She works
Sims,
for Freddy.
Dr. Sims is a bitch. But I want to say, in this moment right here, fuck Dr. Gordon. So this motherfucker, he says, Philip killed himself because he's a piece of shit. He was a pussy. He said
Yeah.
he gave up. He's a fucking coward.
Yeah, and then he's like, he let everybody down. He let you guys down. And I'm like, man,
Dude.
that's kind of what you don't want to say to a bunch of kids who are going through something really bad, and probably a lot of them considering this alternative that he's trying to explain happened.
I was like,
Uh,
dude, what the fuck is your problem?
you know what? He treats offing yourself like the U.S. Army does.
Yeah.
I hate to say that in public out loud, but this is very much how the Army treats soldiers who consider this road.
So, I mean, he's supposed to be a psychiatrist, and he's like shaming this guy for mental issues, which we know is not true, but still, what an asshole.
He was an Army psychiatrist before he came to Weston Hills.
And so Dr. Sims then jumps back in and is like, y'all need to get your shit together and stop blaming your dreams for being fuck ups. She then says that from now on, the doors will be locked and they will be sedated at bedtime, pretty much making them fish in a barrel for Freddy. Kincaid then jumps up and says, the fuck you will. Anybody that tries to drug me is going to get their ass kicked. I love Kincaid.
Yeah, hey, Kincaid's we met him today too. He was fucking
Yes.
really awesome. So he's apparently got a comic book that he's working on right now. So
he's going to send us the info on that so we can tell you about that. He also does a really cool nonprofit thing for sending kids to college.
Yeah, he actually pays for textbooks for college. I think he said like last year, or his goal for this year was 13, like paying for college books and stuff for like 13 students. So
Awesome.
Yeah, good dude. Love the character too.
Yeah. So Dr. Sims then calls for security. We then see Max Fishburne run in and put Kincaid in a chokehold while another orderly drags him to solitary confinement. Nancy then begs Dr. Sims to stop, but she basically says fuck off. Gordon, now recognizing this is his chance to score some major points with Nancy, tells Sims that he is prescribing Hypnosil to the group to suppress their dreams. She's pissed and tells him hell no, but he says that they are his patients and he will go above her if he has to which she caves, telling him if anything goes wrong, he will be held fully responsible.
Man, you would think, as rotten as this fucking lady is, like Freddy is manipulating her. Like she is doing everything the opposite of how it should be handled. Like, we're going to lock you guys in a room and not give you any medication, and you're essentially going to be prey.
Yeah. Now, after this, this is just my personal thought. I was just wondering. But Nancy says, do you think we can get the Hypnosil by tomorrow? And Gordon, who's kind of like stressed, is like, well, we'll try. Why doesn't Nancy just give them a little bit of her Hypnosil?
I thought about that too.
Just, just with one night worth.
Yeah, I thought about that, but I also thought that Nancy has obviously went through a lot of school since part 1 and did a lot to get this job. And if something does go wrong, even if it has nothing to do with the Hypnosil, she would go to prison when they found out that she gave them her medication that they technically didn't even have yet.
That's true. So next up is one of the most iconic scenes of this whole entire franchise. So later that night, Jennifer is sitting in the rec room by herself watching TV when, after flipping through some channels, she stops on one of those like late night shows, and we see that the host of this show is interviewing some like celebrity actress lady. I think she's like famous at the time in real life, but I have no fucking clue who she really is.
Yeah, I don't know who it is either. I just know that they brought her on strictly to kill her.
I think the director hated her so much, and she didn't even read the script, so she had no idea this was a horror movie, and I think she got kind of pissed. But, they got the scene, so they didn't fucking care. But anyway, we see Jennifer starting to doze off when suddenly the host on the television show turns into Freddy. The screen then goes fuzzy as he attempts to kill the celebrity guest. This surprises Jennifer, prompting her to jump up and try to change the channel. The remote control doesn't work, which causes her to get up and examine the TV. And as she stands directly in front of it, sparks fly from it, revealing how do I explain this? It's like these like Freddy arms, and they're made out of like metal and wires, and they like come out of the sides of the TV, and they grab Jennifer's shoulder, and they picks her up because the TV is like mounted high up on the wall. And as the TV holds her in the air, we then see Freddy's head stretch out of the top of the TV, looks down at her, and says,
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
Just the way he says bitch. Like it caps it off so well.
yeah, I think a lot of people know this, but this was an ad-lib line by Robert Englund.
It is part of, and what I was talking about earlier is, he kind of got a little bit more of the freedom to, do things that he thought the character would do, or that I should say that he knew the character would do, because he was Freddy at this point. And this is part of what makes Robert Englund irreplaceable.
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
just that personality that he brought to the character, he is just absolutely irreplaceable. Almost to a fault for horror fans sometimes, because as much as we love Robert Englund, we have Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers. You can switch those out with really good
Yeah.
actors that can do the body movements and do stuff. And unfortunately, we can't do that. When there's no more Robert, there's no more Freddy. But he did it so well. There's no way around that.
Yeah, that's a big reason why, I mean, the remake didn't work for many reasons, but that was probably the biggest.
Yeah, the remake had lost before I ever even turned it on. Like it had already lost in my mind, and I thought the 10 minutes of it that I did get through, I don't like the makeup decisions they did with Freddy, but I think even if they would have did the perfect makeup, it just wouldn't have been the same, man. It's not only the look, but it's the character, and that's the biggest part of Freddy is the character.
So Jennifer then lets out a blood-curdling scream when Freddy then slams her head into the TV screen, causing electricity and sparks to shoot everywhere. Max Fishburne then runs in to discover a very dead Jennifer hanging from the TV as it smokes and catches fire. A few days later, we see, I guess it's Jennifer's funeral, maybe it's Philip's funeral. I don't know.
They did a double funeral. They're like, the state's only paying for one of these.
What if that's Gordon's hobby, like funeral crashing? Because like Gordon's there, but he's like far away. Wouldn't it be just like, because we don't know whose fucking funeral it is? What if this fucking weirdo just hangs out at funerals?
He's just like
We don't
wedding
know.
crasher.
Yeah,
he's
he's
looking
like
to
funeral
he's
crashing.
looking to score on some vulnerable women.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. Why? I mean, because if you're at you're one of your patients' funeral, you would be up there, not hanging out 50 feet back by a tree. It's just weird. Just saying.
It
We
is.
don't know what this guy's capable of.
Yeah, definitely is. I don't know why he's so far back. Maybe he's just not a big funeral fan.
Yeah,
But we know he goes to people's medications
I'm
when
saying.
he first meets them.
I'm saying. But anyway, he gets caught by this nun that he keeps seeing around Weston Hills. She asks him about his faith, and he says science, but she tells him that her name is Sister Mary Helen. And she apparently does volunteer work at the hospital from time to time when in need. I thought that's exactly how she said it, and I was like, that's kind of a weird way to say it.
Yeah, well, I think it fits though. It is
Yeah,
a
it
really
fits.
weird way to say it, but when you find out,
Yeah, it's
at
cryptic.
the end,
It's
it
cryptic.
is, from
Time to time.
Yeah, from time to time, and only when she's needed, and it
When in
completely makes sense.
Yeah. So she then tells him that the only thing that can save the teens is if they can lay the spirit to rest, and this spirit is an abomination to God and man. We then see Nancy walk up and basically be like, what are you doing here? And he goes to tell her about the nun, but she has mysteriously vanished. So later on, we see that Nancy and Gordon are having dinner by a fireplace, and Gordon is all bummed out because he can't understand what is happening with the teens and why they are dying. So Nancy decides to sit him down and tell him the truth about what is going on. She says, Neil, no offense, but you're a shitty doctor.
I'm surprised like Gordon wasn't like, holy shit, Nancy, I think that fucking nun is having the same dreams that these kids are having. What the fuck is going on here?
So the next day, we see Dr. Gordon, Nancy, Taryn, Will, Kristen, Joey, and Kincaid all sitting in the group room, and Nancy begins telling them about the man who haunts their dreams, Freddy Krueger. They then ask why he is after them, and Nancy informs them that their parents helped kill him when he was alive, and now he seeks revenge, and that they are the last of the Elm Street kids. She then tells them about Kristen's gift of being able to pull others into her dreams. She says that everyone has their own special dream power, and if they can come together, they can defeat Freddy. Gordon totally kills Nancy's vibe here. He leans over and he kind of chuckles and says, "You sound like Peter Pan." And she gives him this look too, like, "You're a fucking idiot."
Yeah. Well, in his defense, I mean, this would be kind of like, if I was Nancy and I was being straight up, I'd be like, look, you're not a shitty doctor, but you're shitty for this circumstance. Because in real life, this would sound super outlandish.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised he wasn't like, I bet you that fucking nun is putting it in all the kids' head. Like, how else would she know about this?
Yeah. You sound like Peter Pan. Like, dude, I'm trying to say some important shit here. Shut the fuck up.
Nancy, do you know Mary Helena?
Yeah.
Do you know her? Has she been putting dreams in your head? Peter Pan.
He then tells everybody to close the blinds so they can try some group hypnosis. Nancy then instructs Kristen to attempt to pull the whole group into a dream. Everyone kind of dozes off for a second, but it doesn't really seem like it worked. They then all decide to take a 5-minute break when suddenly some weird shit starts to happen. Also, while this is going on, Joey decides to stalk the hot nurse lady. He follows her into a room where she then starts telling him about this big crush she has on him. I'm like, dude, you're like 15. You can't speak. You got a fucking teardrop tattoo and you're in a mental institution. I doubt she's flicking her bean to the thoughts of Joey at nighttime.
Yeah.
He's falling for it, though.
He's chronically horny. I'm telling you. That's why he's here. He's like Pee Wee Herman level, like rubbing one off in the movie theater horny.
Yeah, so he's falling for it. And meanwhile, back in the group room, they have realized that Kristen was able to pull them into a dream. And Dr. Gordon doesn't really believe it at first until Will stands up out of his wheelchair. So this is where each kid kind of showcases their dream warrior power. And we see that Will is a wizard and can do cool green lightning. Kristen is a gymnast, I guess. She can do backflips and things. Kincaid is super strong. He picks up a chair and bends it very easily. Taryn, well, I'm not sure, this is really a power. It's more of a new outfit. She has, she has, this super punk rock, leather outfit with, silver studs all over it. A 3-foot tall mohawk and 2 baby switchblades. I'm not sure where the power part is.
She's beautiful and bad.
Which I got her to write that on my poster, and it was awesome.
And Joey has a very, very strong erection. That's his power.
No, Joey's superpower is...
we know what it is later on.
It's seducing 26-year-old nurses.
Yeah.
Because he's sitting on the bed, and she begins undressing, and we see her chesticles, and they're very, very
Don't
nice.
call them chesticles.
They're
That's
chesticles.
awful.
They
It's awful.
Well,
that's the last thing I want to think of when I'm thinking of breasts.
They then begin to romantically make out when suddenly Joey begins freaking out. There was a scene here. Well, I'll get through the scene
Oh
and then I'll say
god,
it,
yeah, we got to talk about this. It's the fucking awfulest thing and the best thing ever.
It's so awful. The next part is hard to describe, but it turns out she has like a super long tongue.
Yeah,
She then
that's her superpower.
she then sits up and she spits out these tongues that kind of confine Joey to the headboard, and it is then revealed to actually be Freddy in disguise. Now, they cut this part out, thank God, but they take this very attractive woman who has an amazing body, and they actually sculpted like from the shoulders up like Freddy's head. And it is fucking terrifying.
Yeah. To explain this for the people who haven't seen this, which I assume most people haven't.
You have to
unless
see
you've
the
seen
documentary.
Yeah, the documentary. This is a naked woman with Freddy Krueger's, like, her body is not burnt, anything. She's nice, pretty nice boobs for fake ones, I'll say that. Beautiful body, normal skin, and then from the neck up, it turns into burned Freddy. And what makes it even worse is that when they sculpted Robert Englund's head, it's like a mask that has to sit over her head, and it's way too big.
It's disturbing. Like they cut it because they were like, this is not good.
It's one of those things where on paper they were like, okay, that's pretty crazy. You know, this isn't the Nightmare on Elm Street. We can do some crazy stuff. And then they did it and they were like, oh my God, we can't put this in a fucking movie. There's no way.
I am almost always against taking special effects out, but in this time, I agree. Please hide that.
It's
somewhere.
just fucking hilarious. Like, it is scary.
It creeps me out.
It is very creepy. But that is not why I think they should take it out. Not for the creepiness. It's for the...
It shouldn't exist.
It
shouldn't
exist.
exist.
It's fucking hilarious and creepy. And the fact that the head is like way too big makes it even fucking worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
I will say though, for this scene, the tongues that are holding him on the bed, they did practical effects so fucking good in this movie. Instead of just making like fake tongues that held him on the bed, they actually made them like mechanical puppets.
Yeah.
And they move, and I think it really makes this scene. Like, I've never really noticed until I watched it close, but the tongues are actually moving the entire time, and it really makes this scene a lot more creepier for me.
So Kristen then jumps up in the group room and informs everyone that Freddy's close and that he has Joey. The room then starts melting and falling apart, and right before things go bad, Dr. Sims walks into the group room, waking everyone up out of the dream, and needless to say, she's pissed about an unauthorized group meeting. I will say though, it's kind of understandable. She walks in and everybody looks like they died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Like, when she walks in, like, they're all just passed out in their chairs and it's like, look like they just fucking died.
Yeah, I think this was added in for effect too, because they're dreaming. There's the fire in the dreams, so when she opens the door, you can actually see the smoke. I assume some of the smoke from their dreams that seeped into the real world, into the room. But yeah, that makes it even worse.
Yeah. But yeah, they all wake up except Joey. He's in like a coma.
She's like, is this Hypnocil?
Oh
Oh my God.
So Dr. Sims gets the head of the hospital involved, and he's fucking mad over Joey being in a coma, and he fires Dr. Gordon and Nancy.
You know, everything we know now about Hypnocil, this is why he's in the coma. The Hypnocil is what allows Freddy to keep these people in comas and keep them alive. And you know, from like Freddy versus Jason, they even say, like, all the people in the coma, this is all the people who reacted bad to the Hypnocil.
Yeah.
And they're trapped now in this coma where Freddy can forever torture them.
As Gordon loads his belongings in his car, he spots Sister Mary
I think it's Mary Helena.
Helena? I thought it was Mary Helen. I totally could be wrong. So.
Well, my subtitle said Helena, so
that might be
that's
possible.
just what I'm basing it off of.
I may call her either one at this point because I always thought her name was Sister Mary Helen, but I could be wrong.
Well, you know, there's the Nope. Her name is Amanda Kruger in the credits. So fucks.
Okay.
I guess we're not gonna find out.
So Sister Mary Helen in the window of the tower. So he breaks in and finds her in there being all creepy, where she then tells him about a young woman who worked in the insane asylum long ago named Amanda Kruger. Well, you already spoiled that. One day over the holiday weekend,
Cut that out.
Amanda was accidentally. I mean,
It's Helena.
you spoiled a fucking movie that's literally like 37 years old. I think it's okay.
Yeah. Well, it's Helena. We figured that out.
I'm probably still gonna fuck it up because I've literally went my whole entire life thinking it was Mary Helen. Because they only say her name one time.
As soon as I seen it written, it just reminded me of the My Chemical Romance song.
Oh.
I think it's called Helena.
Hmm.
And I think that's why it caught my eye. I never realized it was either. I thought it was Mary Helen.
Yeah, so Amanda Kruger, it was holiday weekend, and she accidentally gets locked in a room containing many of the criminal insane. She was then captured and hidden by the criminals for days as they raped her. She was eventually found, but she was barely alive and now pregnant with a young Freddy Krueger, the bastard of 100 maniacs. Gordon then tells Nancy about his encounter with the nun, where they both agree that they must find Freddy's remains and properly put them to rest. The only problem is, the only person who knows where his remains are is Nancy's father, who, if you remember from the original, doesn't really believe in all the Freddy stuff.
Do you think Gordon would have vandalized that lock if he hadn't just been fired? Or was a little bit of that anger?
I don't know. Yeah.
Crashing funerals, probably weddings too, going through people's medication, vandalizing your former place of work.
I think that he's not as good as the guy as he tries to pretend to be.
I think Bill Maher may not be that great of a guy.
He does look like
He-
Bill Maher. Good
he is
God. He always
always-
looked familiar, but I've actually seen him long before I've seen who Bill Maher was.
Yeah, I've always,
So maybe Bill Maher looks like him.
yeah, we'll have to find out which one's older, which I assume this guy, because I would hope Bill Maher looked a little younger. Well, I don't know. This guy's not that old either. Anyway, yeah, when I was younger, when I first seen Bill Maher,
Thought it was
there was a time when I was younger where I thought they were the same guy. That's how much they look alike. Like the first time I ever seen Bill Maher on TV, I thought that
It's the guy from Dream Warriors.
I thought it was I was like, this guy was an actor. He's been in movies.
Yeah.
Now he's doing like a political thing. Yeah, I was wrong.
So they find Donald Thompson at the local bar getting hammered. We see here that him and Nancy haven't really seen or talked to each other in a long time. Nancy definitely holds some kind of grudge against him for the events of the first film. I actually noticed something for the first time here. Donald Thompson, who, if you remember, was a lieutenant in the police force in the original, is now a fucking security guard.
Yeah, he's fallen off.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this movie. This movie, I've seen probably almost more than like anything else I've ever seen. I've never noticed that.
Yeah.
This might be the movie I've seen the most out of all movies, but I can't say that for sure.
Well, I gotta say, I can say for sure that I have never realized that either.
No. Anyway, despite Nancy's like pleading with him to help, he declines, and once again, doubting her story of the Freddy Krueger coming back to, murder people, she gets pissed and she goes to leave when suddenly Gordon gets a call from Taryn at the hospital informing him that Kristen has been sedated by Dr. Sims and placed into the quiet room.
And I, for one, did not realize. I forgot that pagers existed this long ago. Like, this had to have been the beginning of pagers?
Probably, because like only like doctors and stuff had them. They're like kind of like people that needed them, not just your friends.
And
Probably expensive.
how the fuck did they page him from the hospital?
She got the phone and dialed his pager number in, and then
You could call a pager? I thought you had to have another pager to page somebody.
No, you would do it from a phone. Yeah, you would just dial the pager number.
So you couldn't
then you
page
could-
somebody from your pager?
No. Pager was like you sent an alert to someone, and then they would call the number back that paged them.
Well, fuck
You
me.
would always do it from a phone. You could never do
I
it
guess
from
that
pager.
extra 6 years you got on me really, really.
Actually,
I mean, you
you
do.
had a pager.
Yeah, the extra 6 years. By the time I was that age, I was using your hand-me-down cell phone.
Yeah, I had a like it was cool because you could like see through it and see all the cool parts in it, but it was green. You know, like back in the 90s, I had a bunch of shit like that with like plastic you could see through and see all the electronics. We thought that shit was cool. Yeah, I actually had one. So Nancy then decides to split up from Gordon and go try and help Kristen while Gordon attempts to find Freddy's remains. After getting a bit rough with Nancy's dad, he finally agrees to show him where they put Freddy's remains.
Bro, Gordon's assaulting people now.
Dude, he's getting fucking
He
unhinged.
He has vandalized his old place of work, crashed funerals. He has went through somebody he just met's prescriptions, and now he is assaulting the same woman that he violated her privacy. He is assaulting her dad.
Don't forget, he gave medication to underaged people that hasn't even been approved by the FDA.
Good God.
Yeah.
God, man.
So they then stop by a church to steal some holy water in a crucifix.
He does.
You sure he's not Freddy?
Literally, I was gonna ask you: is he the real villain of this movie? Is Freddy innocent? And he's the. You know, I'm wondering, is holy water still holy if it's stolen?
I think so.
I feel like there's got to be some clause in like holy water that if it is stolen,
Loses its holy.
it's got to lose its holy. Like,
I don't
what
know.
if you drown somebody in holy water? Is it still holy?
Do they go to heaven automatically? The questions that this brings up.
For those who are familiar with religion and the clauses in holy water, please do answer these questions. Is it still holy if you steal it?
Yeah, what's the guidelines and the rules for holy water?
Can I waterboard somebody with holy water and it be okay?
Sure.
I mean, if I'm doing it in the name of the Lord, with
if
the
you do
holy
anything
water,
in the name of the Lord, I think it's okay according to the rest of humanity. I guess. I don't know. Next we
the
see
Crusades, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's been a lot of crazy shit that's happened. Next, we see Nancy arrive at the hospital, but when she attempts to go in to see Kristen, Max Fishburne says, fuck no. He tells her that despite him thinking that she really does care for the kids, he has direct orders from Dr. Bitchface Sims to not allow her to see Kristen. She then asks if she could say goodbye to the others one last time, to which he agrees, and he tells her that they are all in the rec room. Nancy then barges in there, telling the kids to follow her so they can have one last group session. They then rush into a room where Nancy tells them that Kristen and Joey need their help going against Freddy. She then informs them that if they die in this dream, they die for real, which is really cool because Heather Langenkamp wrote that on my poster, actually. Where was that? I got distracted by remembering my awesome memory.
Starstruck, man.
I actually
Can't
thought
get
it
it
was in
out
my
of your
glove.
mind.
Oh, yeah. And she asked if anybody wants to back out. Now's the time to do it, which nobody does because they're all motherfucking dream warriors. After Nancy hypnotizes everyone, they all wake up in the quiet room with Kristen. Well, I guess they don't really wake up. They fall asleep in the room. How do you explain it? So they fall asleep and then end up in Kristen's dream world. I guess that's the best way to put it. Because it doesn't really make sense that they wake up in there with Kristen because they don't wake up. They're actually more asleep, the opposite of waking up.
They're dream warriors.
They're in Kristen's fucking dream warrior dream world.
You
That's
know
all you
who's
need to know.
not a dream warrior? Speaking at the panel, I never
Oh,
realized
I didn't either, and I felt
that
bad.
Philip is not an actual dream warrior, and this
Yeah, Bradley Gregg, who was awesome
Yeah.
guy.
he actually is the one who pointed it out.
Yeah,
so.
he brought it up. He said, "I'm actually the only one that's not a dream warrior. I didn't get a power."
And it was kind of sad.
It was sad.
So we're gonna call him a dream warrior. He would have had some type of power.
He's an honorary dream
He would have
warrior.
had the power to
Make
not
dolls.
sleepwalk.
He's gonna make dolls.
That's poetic how he dies though, and I just put that together with he
Oh, yeah, man,
sleepwalks.
totally.
That's probably what he's in there for. Obviously, he
Yeah.
had to done some dangerous shit while he was sleepwalking or something, but he literally Freddy sleepwalks him to death.
Yeah.
Poetic.
Really cool guy, though. I believe he was telling us that his son is he got some kind of big part or something in the new Stranger Things season. So I don't know if we were supposed to tell everybody that or not, but that's cool. Cool news. He seems to have done well, even though he died pretty early on in Dream Warriors. I think he had a pretty decent career.
Well, he gave a lot of advice to people who
Yeah.
were like trying to get in the industry of what to do, and he seemed like he genuinely wanted to help people. Like there was a girl who came up there and asked him, asked everybody actually, some advice on getting in the industry for people who want to be actors, and he answered the question more so than anybody else. But there was another girl who came up there and talked about some stuff she worked on, and he immediately was like, you two need to
connect.
talk. Like, this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah,
It's
cool
just-
dude. Totally a cool dude. So after this sweet reunion, Freddy begins shredding the walls of the quiet room, causing tons of feathers everywhere. And then out of nowhere, Kristen is transported back to the beginning of the film. So there she is again, building the Elm Street house, eating her coffee, listening to Into the Fire on like volume 10. We once again see Kristen's mom burst into her room. She turns the radio down and starts berating her about not being in bed yet because remember, her mom's got a man over and she's fiending for that double-decker dicka.
You think she's sleeping and she's fucking Freddy? Like she's in the dream too. She's just fucking Freddy.
I
She'll
don't
take
know.
anything she can get at
Maybe.
this point.
I don't know.
She's like, God damn it, Kristen.
Possibly. And Kristen is like immediately like, what the fuck is going on here? Kristen then gives her mom like a big hug, and something is a little off because her mom is a lot nicer here, which is weird because this is a Freddy Krueger dream. If your mom is worse in real life than the Freddy Krueger dream version of her.
I wonder if this was kind of the catalyst or kind of what kind of maybe gave the idea for, and is it part 4 where they get caught in the loop? Where they kind of start jumping back.
That's
reliving the same thing.
I think it's 5. Yeah.
4 or 5.
Because her and Dan are already together. Alice and Dan are together, I think. Or no, maybe it is 4 because maybe they're not together yet. Yeah, I think it actually might be 4 where they do the loop. They come from the diner and they keep doing the loop.
Yeah, part 4. Yeah, where they get stuck in the loop.
Yeah, that might be 4 because I don't think they're actually dating yet. Her and Dan, they're like just getting together or something.
Yeah, I wonder if this was kind of like the catalyst for that, though. How she kind of jumps back to the beginning and she's confused. She doesn't realize it quite immediately. Yeah, just a thought.
Yeah. So Kristen starts to tell her mom about her awful dream when suddenly her mom is pulled into the hallway and Freddy appears wearing a fucking tuxedo as he easily decapitates Kristen's mother. He then puts the head right in front of Kristen as her mom begins berating her about always fucking up her love life. Freddy then tosses the head and tries to stab her with one of his gloves. She runs and does a fucking backflip over him and then does like some Olympic type shit and dives out of the bedroom window. So next we see Taryn's nightmare. And basically what Freddy has done here is he has like separated all of the teens in the dream world. Obviously because it's probably easier to kill them individually.
It's because Dr. Sims. Dr. Sims, he's like, that's a good idea, Dr. Sims.
But we see Taryn's dream world is like this sleazy New York alleyway with like the shitty bar entrance. It is very 80s and it is very New York.
I thought that this was kind of something I'd never really put together. I thought they just put her there because that's more of her personality. But with this being her nightmare, I think that kind of alludes back to her biggest nightmare being going back to that life and relapsing. Because that's obviously the kind of environment she was in when she was on what I assume to be heroin.
But she's in her Dream Warrior outfit. She's got her leather suit. She's got her, metal studs. She's got her 4-foot-tall mohawk. And she attempts to run away, but finds the entrance is now blocked off with like a brick wall. And it is at this point that she realizes she's going to have to fight Freddy. So we then get some awesome 80s drums with all the reverb. And as she gets serious and pulls out her baby switchblades. And as she begins walking down the alleyway, we see a bum stand up and walk past her. But when she turns around, Freddy is standing face to face with her. They then begin fighting, and she's, got her little tiny knives out, and him with his, razor finger gloves. And he is able to slice her leg, but she manages to shank him under his armpit. He then kind of recoils in pain, and as she thinks she's got him on the ropes, he then says, "Why should we fight? We're old friends, don't you remember?" As he holds up his hands to show that all of his fingers are now syringes filled with blue heroin.
But it's Walter White's heroin. He came out with some heroin too.
This is obviously one of the coolest and most memorable shots of Freddy. I have my Dream Warriors NECA Freddy set up with the syringes. That's the main reason I had to get him, because it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I have a framed poster of the syringes hanging up. So it's definitely
cool.
one of the iconic moments as well from the franchise.
But anyway, he then looks her in the eyes and says, "Let's get high." This immediately upsets Taryn, and as she looks down, her fucking track marks on her arms are suckling like little baby birds for those drugs. Whoever thought of that is that's a wild thing.
Done so good too. They're it's like little baby mouse, like wanting a bottle.
Yeah.
And doing the sucking motion of a bottle, and it's there's a phobia. I have it. I don't know what phobia it is, but it's like the holes in your skin, and it kind of almost touches on that too. But it was done so great. So there's actually in the documentary, it says her head was supposed to explode.
Yeah, it was.
And I guess they couldn't get the prop to work right. I wonder how that whole scene was supposed to play out. Was her head going to explode from the drugs, or was there a whole nother scene and they kind of improvised some of that?
I think it was just supposed to, because if you look at the original shot where he put him in there, you see the veins going up her arms. And I think originally the veins went up her arms or whatever, and then her head just blew up. But yeah, I guess it failed. But I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking if they improvised as far as the track marks and stuff, that would be really, really good on the spot thinking. But yeah, regardless, her head was supposed to blow up. That's the important part.
Freddy then stabs all of the needles into her arms, injecting this blue, maybe it's Windex. Maybe that's why she dies. It's just Windex. Or it's fucking Drano from Urban Legend.
Something that makes your head blow up. I don't know.
But this kills Taryn. Honestly, in my opinion, it is the saddest death in the movie. I actually feel really bad for her death, which is rare in a horror movie. I normally but I actually feel bad for her.
I mean, he ODs her on drugs.
Yeah, and she gets a chance to do drugs throughout the movie, and she legitimately doesn't want to do that anymore. And honestly, this is kind of a really fucked up way to kill somebody.
Yeah, there's actually, I forgot about that. The creepy ass staff member at the hospital who's trying to give her drugs and party, obviously to hook up with the teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't want.
And with this whole scene being kind of her version of her biggest nightmare, she clearly doesn't want to go back to drugs, and she gets OD'd to death.
Yeah, I think it's super sad.
Fentanyl. It's fentanyl before fentanyl existed.
Yeah, but that's the end of Taryn. But the show must go on, and next up to bat is Will. And as Bob Barker used to say, "Come on down." So we see that Will is walking in this small concrete tunnel. I do not know why he is still wearing his PJs. Everyone else got cool Dream Warrior outfits when they ride in the Dream World, and he's still rocking his fucking matching top and bottom PJs.
He likes the PJs, man.
I guess if he's going to fight Freddy, he's going to be comfortable, goddammit. Good for him. So he's walking, pretty confused about where he's at. He begins to yell hello, but no one answers. We then hear Freddy laugh in the background, and as Will turns around to see, oh boy, a fucking demonic wheelchair. This is so fucked up. Like I don't think they could put this in a movie now.
No, like
paraplegic
especially
kid is-
right after you OD'd a fucking recovering drug addict teenager who wants to be clean, and then you take a paraplegic and try to kill him with a wheelchair.
A demon wheelchair.
Only in the Nightmare on Elm Street series can you get away with doing something like this and it not feeling out of place.
The chair slowly turns, and you can see like all these spikes and blades and like chains and shit. Freddy then appears at the other end of the tunnel and says, "You look tired. You should have a seat."
Freddy with the WWF steel chair to the face.
Yeah, you should have a seat to a wheelchair person. That's fucking cold. The chair then rushes straight for Will as he takes off running. Right before the spikes on the chair get him, he quickly moves out of the way. So you can't really tell until the chair like passes him or when it's like next to Freddy. But dude, this chair's fucking huge. The top of the wheel is even with Robert Englund's waist. Now I looked it up. Robert Englund's 5'10". So the chair is actually like, the top of the chair is like at least 6 inches taller than Robert Englund, like Freddy's hat.
It's a big chair.
It's a fucking big chair, dude. It's like 6 foot.
The ultimate steel chair.
Actually, I did see too, they originally built it too big and it wouldn't fit in that fucking tunnel. They had to make it smaller.
I wonder what they were thinking. Like, why did they make it so big?
It's like a fucking 15-foot wheelchair.
Imagine the headache of the guys who just built this fucking massive wheelchair and they're like, it won't fit in the hallway. You have to rebuild it, but smaller.
It's fucking huge.
Because you have to make this from scratch, obviously. There's no, like, parts out there for a fucking 8-foot tall wheelchair.
Yeah, actually, like, I wrote the episode, and like, I wrote, it was like, God damn, that's a big chair. Like, I never noticed it until this time, like, when it's next to Freddy's fucking huge. And then I watched the Never Sleep Again, and they started talking about how it used to be bigger. And I was like, fuck. Oh, man. But this pisses Will off, and he then remembers his dream power. He then morphs into the Wizard Master and conjures up some sweet lime green lightning. And just like Emperor Palpatine, he shoots bolts of electricity from his fingers, causing the chair to explode.
You took my Palpatine would be proud. You took it. I guess it was pretty obvious. So he gets 2 powers. He gets to walk. There's a power for him.
I don't
And
think
he
that's
gets
a power.
It is when you're a fucking paraplegic.
Your spine can't be fucked up in a dream, man. Like, you're just normal.
Yeah, it is. I bet you most people who've been paraplegic their whole life and their dreams, they're paraplegic. If you've never walked, you're not.
He used to walk. He jumped off a building recently.
I'm sure that it's still considered a superpower. I'm saying it's a superpower. You know, if my arms get blown off tomorrow and in my dreams I grow arms, that's a superpower.
I feel like you would still have your arms in your dreams, but
one thing about this scene, I will say, that's always kind of a negative on the movie. Not on the movie, but just something that it's always bothered me is his wizard costume looks like a cheap dollar store wizard costume.
I was literally waiting for you to finish so I could ask you if you want to talk about his wizard costume. Literally.
It's so fucking like cheap.
So, okay, let me throw out there what I got to say. I got 2 things. So, for one, he still has his PJs on underneath it. But besides that, his outfit kind of makes him look like Count Chocula.
It's like they built it's like you got the fucking Wish Count Chocula outfit.
I mean, I even looked Count Chocula up to like make sure that I wasn't fucking that up because that's what it looked like to me. And nope, Count Chocula. Count Chocula had PJs on and glasses.
This is what happens when you order your Dracula costume from like Alibaba.
Yeah.
500 of these.
Yeah, shout out to Ira Heaton though. He's fucking hilarious in real life. I actually really like him. He's super cool. Probably like the funniest out of the whole cast. And that motherfucker does not age.
No, I was gonna say
God, if
he
he would have
definitely is
came
the
out,
youngest
if he would have
looking.
wore his PJs and his Count Chocula cape,
That would have been hilarious.
oh man,
See, and he's got the sense of humor to
he would
do
do it.
something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
super cool dude. So he then spouts off this like goofy spell where he then shoots the lightning at Freddy. Freddy looks like he's like tangled up in a green glowing phone cord. Will thinks he's got him beat when suddenly Freddy grabs him by his PJs and lifts him high into the air before stabbing him right in the heart with the bladed fingers. And that is the end of Will.
Where he got that wizard confidence too fast.
He said it today. He was like, I fucked up. Or I shouldn't just walked up to him. It's like, yeah, that's where you fucked up.
He said he would have beat Freddy had he not went after him. And I'm like, I don't know if you would have beat him, but you definitely wouldn't have died when you did.
Yeah, you would have maybe died a minute later. Yeah, so I did see that they were talking about how the glove that day, the blades on the glove would not retract. They couldn't like figure out what was wrong with it. So what they did was they actually put a fucking 2x4 underneath his Count Chocula and PJ's outfit, and Robert England basically had to, hopefully he got it right, and actually stabbed his blades into the 2x4 for Ira Hayden's death. And, apparently it all went really well. But yeah, that was an interesting kind of mistake that happened that day that could have been bad.
Yeah, there's Robert England is the only person I would trust to stab me in the right place with a knife glove.
Yes. We then finally jump back to Kristen, who is now walking through the dilapidated dream version of Elm Street house when she runs into Nancy. As they hug in excitement, they begin to hear the wall crack, which instantly puts them on guard. And as the wall pushes out and crumbles, it is revealed to be Kincaid. Because remember, his power is being really strong. And I'd like to say, Kincaid's outfit looks cool. He's got a bright red tank top. He's got black suspenders. He's got ripped up pair of jeans. He's got some matching red tennis shoes. So there's no excuse for Will to be in his PJs. Kincaid is ready to throw down, though, and he shouts, "Hey, Freddy, where you hiding at, you burnt-faced pussy?" And I love that line. It's one of my favorite lines from the movie. Nancy tries to get him to stop by telling him like they need to regroup with the others before they fight Freddy, but he just keeps yelling, calling Freddy a pussy. So then suddenly, in the middle of the room, we see this big metal door appear. They stare at it for a moment when Nancy then says, "It's a door." I was like,
No shit.
no shit. The door then opens, leading them to basically hell, and they all head down. So we jump back to Gordon, who is now in a junkyard with Nancy's dad, looking for Freddy's remains. They then park, and Donald points to this old red Cadillac, telling him the remains are in the trunk. I actually looked into it, and this is the same car from the end of the first one, like the Freddy car. Yeah, I thought it was cool. So back down in hell, we see Freddy's lair, which honestly looks awesome. So it's like all lit in blood red lighting. It's got like all this junk just stacked everywhere. It has this huge furnace burning in the middle. And we see Joey's arms and legs are tied to posts in the ground, like suspending him over what looks to be like the fires of hell.
No, this set is phenomenal.
It is.
Like the amount of time and detail that they had to put into this. I put in my notes. I'm like, imagine getting to work on this. Imagine being part of this set, or just even having that memory of getting to be a part of this.
It's funny because they actually hated the set because apparently there was like no AC, so it was extremely hot.
I would be okay with it.
There was way too much smoke. Heather Lanley Camp said that like the smoke had a bad smell to it as well. But the biggest problem they had was the fire department kept constantly shutting them down for fire issues.
Well, they're famous actors, but us normal people, especially huge fans of horror movies, like if I could have that memory of being there, if I could go back in time and actually experience that, none of that shit would bother me.
Yeah,
I'd be
super
so
cool.
excited.
So Freddy then comes walking out from behind the furnace laughing. Kristen yells for him to let Joey go, which he kind of does. We start seeing one by one the tongue things that are like holding Joey up begin to let go. Nancy makes her way down just in time to save him. Kristen then double flip kicks Freddy across the lair. Kincaid then runs over and pulls Nancy and Joey up from the fiery hole. Freddy then backhands Kristen to the ground like a pimp smacking his hoe over being short on the rent. And right before he stabs her, Kincaid attacks him with a metal pipe. This doesn't last though, because Freddy manages to grab him by the neck and lift him high into the air until Nancy comes in clutch with the steel rod, stabbing it right through Freddy's stomach. But, of course, he just laughs as he pulls it out effortlessly and licks his own blood from it. He then says that the souls of the children give him strength as he removes the front of his sweater, revealing the other teens' faces screaming in pain, and they're like stuck in his skin, and I love it.
Another super iconic moment from the
Yes.
franchise.
Yes. So Freddy then has this look on his face of surprise as he then just disappears. We then jump back to the junkyard where we see Gordon and Donald digging a grave for Freddy's remains. Donald then hears a noise and stops digging when suddenly all the junk cars begin like trying to start with their lights flashing and stuff. Gordon then goes to grab the bag of remains to toss it in the grave when suddenly a burnt skeleton pops out, which is definitely done in stop motion.
Yeah.
So it looks
Very
good though.
clearly.
This thing tries to attack Gordon, but Donald jumps in and tries to like fight the Freddy skeleton. It doesn't go well because he pretty much immediately gets thrown into like a pile of junk, and he actually gets stabbed by the tail of the Freddy Cadillac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he deserved it. He was straight gonna fucking leave.
He's a piece of shit.
I don't know though. Was he the good guy? Because Gordon's kind of a
I
bastard.
don't think either one
Now
of
that
them are
we're
good.
looking deeper into it, yeah, he was gonna leave him in this giant fucking
Yeah.
junkyard.
Knowing that his daughter's life's on the line, but he's got to get back to the bar. Gordon then kind of comically gets his ass beat with the shovel. He ends up unconscious in the grave as the skeleton begins to bury him. He tosses like 6 scoops of dirt on him, and then he does like the celebration, like the long distance runners when they cross the finish line and throw their arms up. He literally does that.
The arm chants I've
Great.
always found fucking hilarious.
It is
I don't know
hilarious.
why they put that in there. Like that's not even like something Freddy would do.
No.
But yeah, it's just these 2 awful stop motion arm chants that I find hilarious.
Yeah. Then the bones just fall to the ground because I guess like Freddy transports back to the dream hell world thing. We then see Nancy, Kincaid, Kristen, and Joey walk into this red hallway with all of these mirrors. The door slams behind them and they realize that it's a trap. Freddy then appears in all the mirrors and laughing can be heard from all the directions. Then all of the Dream Warriors are one by one grabbed by a different Freddy in a different mirror as he attempts to pull them in. Joey then reaches like his breaking point and stands up and screams no, apparently super loud. I guess that his dream power is loud yelling. This apparently is so loud that it not only hurts Freddy's ears, but it breaks all of the mirrors in the room, causing the rest of the gang to fall back into the hallway. And just like that, Joey isn't mute anymore. He talks now.
What a fucking awful power. Like when is this gonna come in handy? Other than
Now.
if you have to break a
Now.
hall of mirrors.
I don't know. So now the group here is like, oh, he's gone. We must have beat him. It's over. I was like, dude, come on. Like he has survived being stabbed. He's been zapped by Count Chocula with green electricity. He was beat with a metal pipe. He was even impaled with a fucking steel rod. But yet, you think you beat him by just yelling.
Yeah.
Like that's Freddy's weakness is being yelled at.
Well, I put in my notes, I wonder if there was something else here that maybe for time constraints or budget constraints that they weren't able to film. Because it really does not make any sense. Like
think it's just
even
like-
Nancy, who's fought him, like she gets excited, like, oh, it's over, and they're hugging each other. Nancy should know of anybody. Like, why would you think that you killed him? Like, what did they do that they thought was the final blow?
Joey yelled at him and he went home.
Yeah, that's all you gotta do is yell at him. Nancy's like, fuck, man, I wish I'd have known that back in part one. I'd have yelled at him from the beginning.
To pull him out and into the real world and then like literally kick his ass.
Yeah.
So Nancy claims victory by yelling, "It's over," and everyone begins to celebrate. We then see some like sparkly magic shit as Nancy's dad's ghost appears. And as Nancy walks over to him, he informs her that he died. He then apologizes for being a shitty dad her whole life, and I guess she forgives him because they then share like a long, loving hug. And everything seems great. Kristen's smiling, she's happy, everything's good. But out of nowhere, we see Freddy's glove stab all the way into Nancy's abdomen, and it is then revealed to be Freddy in disguise. And I said, no, not my Nancy. Like, damn you to hell, Freddy.
Yeah.
Damn you to hell.
We talked about this a little bit in the past, but you know, I absolutely love Nancy, and as much as I hate to see her die, I also love the decision to kill her, because in some franchises, you know, a character will get outplayed or overplayed, and you know, like a Sydney Prescott, where it gets to a point where you're like, you know they're not going to die, and it almost feels too safe. And I love that they weren't afraid to take the biggest character in the entire franchise. They weren't afraid to take her out. So
I mean, I agree with it now, but I'm gonna tell you, my like 7-year-old self did not fucking see this shit coming, and I was just like, no.
Well, imagine all the people in the theaters seeing it for the first time. Like,
Oh yeah, it's wild.
nobody's seen that coming, and that's what makes it feel like, okay, well, if she died, nobody's safe.
Yeah.
And it makes it so much better. You know, I hate when I'm watching a movie and there's a character and you just know that they're untouchable.
Yeah, and you know, Wes Craven actually talked about it because, you know, he's the one that wanted to do it, and he said, you know, I brought Nancy into this world and I wanted to be the one to take her out, and he didn't plan to do any more nightmare movies.
That's a little extreme.
Yeah, well, I mean, he means as a character. But yeah, he was, you know, he did the first one, and then he kind of had a lot to do with this one, and he thought this would be the end. This was supposed to be the end, and he wanted Nancy to have a full circle story. And if they did decide to keep going, they wouldn't keep going with his, you know, his character. I do think it's a great idea, and I think that Nancy, you know, she has a fucking awesome story, and she is an awesome character, and I'm so glad they didn't run her character into the ground.
Yeah.
We do see her again in another nightmare, you know, later down the road, but then how they did that is like, that's a whole separate fucking genius move by Wes Craven to be able to bring Nancy back without it being dumb.
Yeah, that was ingenious.
Yeah.
That was a story outside of the story.
Well, you know, that's actually the prequel to Scream, because that was so fucking meta at the time that people didn't know what meta was. Like, people had a hard time grasping it, and then they see this movie and they're like, fuck, that's a fucking good idea. And then, you know, later on we get Scream that becomes like pretty much entirely meta. But yeah, man, like, I think it's just a really good call to do this with Nancy. I do have something at the very end of this that does have some interesting insight on Nancy's death, though.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, I agree. Especially if this was the end, it just makes sense. I mean, Nancy was the final girl in part one. She comes back and what was going to be the final one, and she essentially sacrifices herself. She gets involved in this situation where she doesn't have this problem anymore to save the last of the remain. So obviously the rest of the Elm Street kids died off while she was off in school doing her thing. And she realizes that these are the last ones, and she goes back and dies saving them. So it's very poetic.
So he then digs the blades in even deeper before slamming the door shut, Kristen locking Joey and Kincaid out of the room. Kristen tries to fight him but gets dropped instantly. Freddy then leans down and goes to kill her when suddenly our girl Nancy comes from behind and stabs him in the chest with his own fucking glove.
And Jason Voorhees is in the corner taking note.
Yeah. While this is going on, we see Gordon finally get off his lazy ass and put the remains in the hole. He does some kind of like prayer, and then he splashes some holy water on the bones, which we see in the dream world like rips these big ass holes of light in Freddy's body. Gordon then completes the burial and the prayer, which kills Freddy, for now anyway. Kristen then holds a dying Nancy as she uses her dream power to place Nancy in a beautiful dream forever and ever. We then jump to Gordon, Kincaid, Joey, and Kristen attending Nancy's funeral. While the priest says his prayer stuff, Gordon sees Sister Mary Helen lurking in the background. He then runs over to talk to her, but she walks behind a tree, and as he turns the corner, he finds a tombstone that reads Amanda Kruger, aka Sister Mary Helena. Maybe
There it
Helena,
is.
Helena.
There it's revealed.
Yes, it is revealed.
It is
It's
finally
fucking
revealed.
Freddy's mom.
I did not say that earlier in the episode.
Ma. Where's the meatloaf?
You know, I love the whole thing with this mom. This movie adding that backstory of Freddy and how he came to be, like the bastard child of
100 Maniacs.
yeah, I absolutely love that they put that in here and they added, because you know it gets dangerous when you start going in to a third part of a movie and adding like a backstory and how somebody came about, and to show, you know, the mom in there. And I think it was a really great call. No better way to explain how Freddy Krueger came about. And then it kind of laid the groundwork too for going on to the future.
I do have an opinion on this, but I'm going to save it for the end because I have a lot.
Thought we were at the end.
Not quite. So later that night, we see Dr. Gordon sound asleep in his bed. He now has Nancy's little China dream doll thing, and right next to him is Kristen's Elm Street house. And as the camera pans back, we see a little light cut on upstairs in the Elm Street model. Cue the 80s rock music because that is the end of one of the greatest sequels ever.
Okay.
Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
1 minute later, we are at the
No. I didn't mean that end. I mean like when I get to my rating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I it's a Malaysian dream doll. I actually
that's
looked
like I was
this
saying.
up.
Okay.
I don't think it's a real thing. Somehow it was used in like Batman too. I don't know where that connection is. But yeah, I love the light coming on, the typical Nightmare on Elm Street ending, kind of a twist ending. Good touch.
Do you take that as, Freddy's not dead?
I mean,
It's like a hint to...
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have tried to figure out what exactly that means.
Well, I mean, you had the ending at the ending of the first one, and we obviously know that didn't happen. So, I mean, that's kind of a thing with Nightmare on Elm Street, is there's always like a twist end. Normally, they ignore that going into the next movie. So, just depends on how you look at it. I would take that as Freddy somehow is still in existence.
All right, I got some facts. I'm just going to kind of burn through these real quick so we can kind of talk about our final thoughts of the movie when we do our rating and stuff. So, the guy who plays Kincaid, Ken Sagos, he didn't really want to audition for the role of Kincaid, but his agent talked him into it. And on the day of the audition, he walked in like a heavy rainstorm. He caught the bus. He then shows up like completely soaked. He has to then sit for like hours because the auditions were running late. And when it was his turn, director Chuck Russell told him to do whatever he wanted. And because he was so frustrated and mad about the whole situation, he literally looked at him and yelled, "Fuck you." And he then proceeds to scream and cuss out Russell, and Russell immediately hired him. So that's awesome.
Yeah, interesting too. So I just learned this today. So during the panel with him, he actually mentions, and I haven't like back checked this, but if I'm recalling right, he mentioned that he was the first African American
to survive.
To survive.
Yeah.
And then, but I thought he said survive in horror, like in a horror movie.
Yeah,
any horror movie, which is that's a pretty big deal. But what makes that a really, really big deal is, according to him, he said the way he's heard it is that Kincaid was not initially written as a African American character. That is something that Wes Craven changed,
Wanted, yeah.
and he kind of brought that into existence. So I thought that was really cool.
Super cool. So this movie takes place 6 years after the original Nightmare on Elm Street and only 1 year after Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
Damn, Nancy got to school quick, didn't
Yeah,
she?
became a psychologist in 6 years. Good for her.
She recovered. She recovered and went to med school. Damn.
So in a few other countries, this film was renamed, and I wanted to include them because I thought they were pretty funny. So, for example, in France, the movie was retitled Freddy 3: Claw of the Nightmare.
Claw of the
Claws
Nightmare.
of the Nightmare.
That's awful.
In Japan, the movie was called Nightmare on Elm Street 3: Tragedy House.
That doesn't even take place in a house. It's like one of the only movies that doesn't take place in a house.
All right, so this is the last one. This is like really important. So I'm trying to remember how they did this. This is the script version of it, like, and I don't know if they filmed it and they just never put it in. They took it out. I'm not sure, but this is the actual ending of the movie. So Dr. Gordon visits Kristen a few days after Freddy's defeat. Kristen reveals that she is moving to New York, the city that never sleeps. When Dr. Gordon asks her if she is going to see, talking about Nancy, if she's going to see Nancy in her dreams, Kristen answers that she dreams of Nancy every night, suggesting that Nancy guards her dreams now. The scene then cuts to the ending, which plays out in the finished film as it was, implying that Nancy, not Freddy, turns on the light as she is guarding Gordon's dreams as well.
Well, see, what's really interesting about that, and actually, we kind of skipped over it, but I had it in my notes. So he has her Malaysian dream doll, which she explains earlier in the movie protects her dreams. Kind of similar to a dream catcher. It's supposed to catch bad dreams, but it protects her in her dreams. And he now has her Malaysian dream doll, and that's very poetic if that is her now, with him having her doll, her watching over his dreams. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is cool. But I thought that was really interesting because, I'd always took that as Freddy's not dead, like he's still going. But then when you actually read how it was supposed to be done, and like I said, I don't have any clarification if they actually shot the scene. But apparently it's Nancy, which makes sense because when she lived in 1428 Elm, her room was like upstairs, like in the front.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I think just knowing the franchise, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and how they had ended the movies up until this point, you just naturally think it's Freddy. It's like there's always a twist of Freddy's still alive. So, my brain never even thought of that as a possibility. But that's really cool, and it makes a lot of sense with him having her little dream catcher doll.
All right, so ratings in kill count. We have a total kills of 6 actual deaths. Only 6. We have Philip, who, the tendons and stuff ripped out, and he was walked off a building. We have Jennifer, who got the head smashed to the TV. We have Taryn, who was sadly injected with an overdose of drugs. We have Will, who was stabbed in the chest by Freddy. You have Donald Thompson, who was impaled in the back with the car. And then, unfortunately, my girl, Nancy Thompson, who was stabbed by Freddy and died later. Favorite kill?
All right, so I'm going to go with Philip here. So this is, we learned today, like we talked about, this is the consensus scariest kill. This is actually, it's worth noting though, that we didn't know earlier, is it is all the casts.
Yeah.
What they thought was the best kill as well. What they thought was the scariest kill. I would say a close second being Jennifer, the Welcome to Primetime bitch kill. It's not only super iconic, but the creativeness of the kill and the creativeness of the practical effects of how they pulled that off with Freddy's head coming through the TV and then like vacuum sealing his head in there. I thought all that was fucking great.
Yeah, I actually went with, it's actually the opposite is what I did. I actually went with the Jennifer, and it has the iconic funny line, but that's not why I went with it. I really think that the mechanical arms coming out is awesome. That's just such a cool idea. And then his head coming out of the top of the T, and they even have the fucking little antenna things or whatever. I think that just kill altogether is fantastic. It's entertaining, it's, funny, it's creative, and it's iconic. I do really like Phillips though. Phillips is scary.
Yeah, it's that's the
Yeah.
same opinion. It's Phillips is by far the more scarier one. The whole like him walking him like a puppet using his tendons ripped out of his fucking arms and legs was just, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just scary. That's closer to part 1 Freddy.
Yeah, I will say, I don't think there's a bad kill in the movie, I guess like, Nancy's dad really wasn't meh. I think it is cool he's like stabbed by the Freddy car. But most of the kills are pretty good.
You know what kill was meh for me? Freddy's, which he's not
Yeah,
actually dead,
not
but
dead.
I thought, especially for this for this to be the last one, I thought it was a really weak way to kill him. Like he puts him in the grave, throws a little bit of dirt, and like just splashes some holy water on him, and that's all they had to do
Yeah.
all along was steal some holy water. You don't even have to actually get it, bless it. You just steal it from the church and splash it on his bones, and that's it. I thought that was weak.
Yeah, what's like really cool about this movie was this was the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and this set the standard from here on out, where each kill was kind of custom to the character that was being killed. We hadn't seen that before until now, and it was Wes Craven who when he originally wrote it was like, it can't be like Nancy versus Freddy again. It needs to be a team. It needs to be a group, and that was really smart. And that what happened because of that was these custom kills now. And I think that literally set the franchise on a whole new direction.
Agreed.
All right. So, film rating. We are finally at this point.
I gave this a 4.7. I will say, and I've mentioned this before, I see this. I don't care for the superpowers. I've never cared for them having like the powers in their dreams, but I equate this to the same way I look at Friday the 13th Part 7, which was supposed to be the Carrie, but it's the girl with the mind power.
It's still good. It's still good.
Yeah, I hate the idea of her having powers, but everything else about the movie I love. And that is peak Jason. This is peak Freddy. So I can look past that because everything else is everything we love about these franchises. I will say the chemistry, the characters was great. I think Heather Langenkamp made a good point today talking about all the characters. Like, so many people relate to this movie because the characters are so different. Everybody who watches this relates with one of the characters in some way, if not multiple characters. I thought that was really interesting take. Makes a lot of sense. I love the fact that they brought Nancy back. Thought the sets were amazing. The practical effects were absolutely amazing. This movie, out of all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, I think has the most iconic scenes of the entire franchise. I love the darker, scary version of Freddy we get in part 1, but this is the best version of Freddy that we get. It gave Robert Englund his ability to improvise, and I think he had really perfected the character of Freddy by this point. And this is when the Freddy that we know was kind of born.
It's kind of when the Nightmare on Elm Street we know gets born. The one that is, they made the most movies like.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I love part 1. Part 1 is my favorite out of the series. I love the dark, scary Freddy. But I think going on to build the character the way they did, it really peaks and sets the stage for the rest of the series. And I thought that was fantastic. Absolute must watch. Just fucking top tier Nightmare on Elm Street.
I gave this movie a fucking 10 out of 5.
I figured that was coming.
I literally gave it 5 isn't even good enough. We're going to 10 now.
Figured that was coming.
I don't think anybody's surprised about that. But I want to say, I have always had in my head for the longest time what I call the Hypnosil trilogy, where you have this really cool, solid story, in this mix of movies. And what I mean by that is you have the original, which started everything. And then you have Dream Warriors, which introduces us, it continues the story, but it introduces us to, Weston Hills, Hypnosil, kind of what's going on with the town and stuff, like the grown-ups about what they think is going on, how they're handling it. And then the third part in this trilogy is Freddy versus Jason, where Freddy versus Jason goes back and pulls so much shit from Dream Warriors that those three movies just together you can literally watch those three movies and it is a trilogy because they go together so well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think you can do that with a couple of the franchises too. Like you get part, 4, 5, and 6, and Friday the 13th. You lay the foundation with part 1, 2, 3, and then you have the Tommy Jarvis
trilogy.
Yeah, it goes to that, and you have the Andy Barclay trilogy.
Yep.
that goes through. So I think it's a really good point. I've never looked at it like that.
Yeah, I've always considered them like, I tried to figure out what I would call it, but I kind of call it the Hypnosil because Hypnosil becomes a kind of major factor.
Becomes a huge thing, yeah.
Yeah, in the, Dream Warriors, and then eventually, because Dream Warriors really sets the tone for what we see in Freddy versus Jason. Because, in my opinion, as much as I love Jason, Freddy versus Jason is more of a Freddy movie to me. It has the Freddy story ingrained in it. But yeah, that's one of the reasons I love this movie so much is those movies go together. This movie I also consider kind of the true sequel to the first one. The second one kind of, jumped away. It did things that Freddy couldn't do before. Honestly, I think this is the true sequel to the original.
I agree. I actually, when it comes to the canon story in my head, I don't count the second one.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
There's so much things that happen in the second one that breaks the rules. You can't break the rules, or it's not canon.
I think that this movie did something that's like really rare with how they did it. And I'll go ahead and kind of set it like this is with, we have so many requels and stuff coming out now, like writers and directors should take note from this. This is the perfect blend of bringing back classic characters while also introducing new characters that will carry the torch. It does a fantastic job of mixing old story and new story together, and same thing with characters, and then killing off your classic characters, but having good characters to carry the story without fucking it up. They also give you a Freddy backstory, but not too much, and it works. Like, it all goes together. 4 goes with this really well. Like, I think the only problem with 4 is Patricia Arquette's not in it. But other than that, 4 goes with 3 really good. It literally continues the Dream Warrior thing.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier with them killing Nancy. As much as I hated it, the fact that you were brave enough to pass the torch and kill off an iconic character, that was my biggest gripe with these Screams. Part 5, they could have killed off Sidney Prescott, but even in part 6, Gale Weathers, you had, I mean, that was my biggest complaint. It's nobody died in that movie. Like they make you think that it's, I don't know, 3 or 4 different characters get what you think is killed, and then they end up living. And Gale Weathers was the biggest one of that, and she ends up somehow surviving. And you get to that point, and you're almost like, that it just feels too safe. Like when a character's untouchable, it just doesn't feel scary anymore.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like they're doing this so much now with all of these movies. And I think if you really want to be successful, you should look at this movie and see how they did it, because there's not a single person I've ever heard that said that they did this bad. They really, moved the story forward without fucking it up, without fucking the characters up, without pissing the fans off. The fans love this movie. And I think, if you are going to do that, take note from this. And that's one of the reasons I love this movie so much is I fucking love Nancy Thompson, and I'm okay with her death here, which is, you wouldn't think that. I've been saying they should kill Sydney they should have killed Sydney in fucking 4 or 5 at this point. But
I think 5 would have been a good time.
Keep going.
That's 5 is where they kind of passed the torch to a new group of characters that are supposed to continue the story. And I think that would have been a really good time. At least kill fucking Gale. God damn. Dewey was not a good enough sacrifice.
No,
he was not a big enough main character, although he was in the original group. But yeah, this movie, the only 2 things that keep it from being a perfect 5-star movie for me is the superpowers. But like I said, I only knock off a point for that. It's the same thing with Part 7, Friday the 13th. Everything else about this movie is peak what we love about the franchise. And then really my biggest gripe is just how they killed Freddy off and at the end, or so we thought killed them off, but how the movie ends.
Well, that is our coverage of Dream Warriors, one of my favorite movies. Big thanks to the Dream Warriors cast that we got to meet and we got to hear talk about. They're fucking awesome. Once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials. Season 2 starts next week. Our very first episode was, some people know, it was Vacancy. So we are going to kick it off with Vacancy 2, The First Cut, which is a prequel. Tell a friend, a family member, or your Max Fishburne about the show. We hope to see you next time. Got any last words?
Welcome to prime time, bitch.